Hello everyone, my name is Scorpion and welcome back to another week of Destiny Reset. So, of course, if you load into the tower, you will likely see the message that Iron Banner is once again active. And this is the third time this season, which also means that this is the last time this season that Iron Banner will be active. Now, in terms of Iron Banner rewards that will be going or staying, now currently in terms of cosmetics, I believe a shader and this emblem are specific to this season, to which you'll have to do a specific amount of work, specifically resetting the ranks. So you don't need to perform exactly well, you just essentially need to play enough Iron Banner that you rank up to the max rank. And to that respect as well, we just got the Swarm of the Raven and Pressurized Precision weapons this season, so those will likely stay. But in terms of focus decoding, depending on whether or not they either make new weapons or bring back older weapons into rotation, it's hard to say what exactly will be leaving, just because I kind of forget the order these things arrived in. So we could see Dark Decider, Ganora's Axe leaving. I think Yorm's Claw and Bite of the Fox for brand new last season, so probably not that. Either Allied Demand, Roar of the Bear, Ganora's Axe, or Dark Decider. I believe those could be rotating out next season, so keep an eye out for that. Although, if you want to make sure you get them, I would just recommend playing Iron Banner while you can before we earn the official, or hear the official of what is leaving, because then you might be boned and just not have access to things anymore. So, in terms of rotations throughout the world, there is no current active booster that I did not see, so I can't say exactly if anything is boosted currently, although trials will not be active, so we'll have no boosted trials as well. We had double Nightfall loot last week, so it's hard to say whether or not anything will be going at the same time. So it's possible that we just don't have a rank boost right now. That typically happens from time to time. But going throughout the world, so I wanted to emphasize something here. If you actually check your fishing and tackle box, I know last week was definitely a double exotic fish time because it seemed like they were coinciding with Bungie Day and the launch of the Wicked Implement exotic mission. So if you wish to actually go for more exotic fish, I don't know if it's double exotic fish, but there's still the increased activity detected in all three of the available zones for fishing. So if you wish to fish in any location and go for any specific exotic fish, trying to complete the Wicked Implement fishing requirements, now is still a good time to go for it. I honestly don't think they might be deactivating increased activity in all three zones till the end of the season, or maybe even for the rest of time, just to make sure that people can get access to Wicked Implement while they still have time for it. And to that aspect as well, now going throughout the world for our playlist activities and rituals. For the Nightfall, the current farming Nightfall is the Corrupted in the Dreaming City, which is generally a harder one, but with the introduction of Strand and Stasis in Together and Contangent, there is still some better and easier ways to get through this, making it not so difficult. But your active modifiers are including 3 Elemental Shields, Overload and Unstoppable Champions, because you'll be fighting Hive as well as Taken. Then you also have Arc Threat for increased arc damage incoming. And then the usual Grandmaster modifiers, including Extinguish, Limited Revives, Epitaph for taking combatants, making the Blight geysers when defeated, so watch the floor. Chaff for no radar, Overcharge weapons based on the seasonal artifact, as well as Arc Surge and Void Surge for your weapons, and Overcharge grenade launchers for all grenade launchers doing bonus damage. And to that respect as well, because it is a Grandmaster available, you have access to the Adept weapon this week, which is the role of the new Hung Jury, which is still a very solid scout rifle. There is still people arguing whether or not this is better than a Wicked Implement just by being what it is. But to that aspect as well, this is still very solid PvP or PvE options. If I recall, PvP has access to box breathing, so you can get an easy 3-tap for free, basically. And a variety of other good perks, Firefly, Rapid Hit, Subsistence, Explosive Payload, something like that, if I recall if its tables correctly. And in terms of the rest of the world, like I mentioned, Iron Banner is currently active, which means Trials will not be active this weekend. But in terms of our rotations, we do have Mayhem for our 6v6 and Supremacy for our 6v6 Relentless. So there we go. And of course, Rumble and Competitive as usual. And per the usual, nothing new in Gambit as well. Now, in terms of the rest of the seasonal stuff, and just to get it right off the bat, we have no new seasonal developments because the Into the Depths mission has, again, completed. So we have our usual rotations. Salvage Legend is still rotating in and out, the incursion being Hive this week, with Engineering, Ordnance Disposal, and Site Reliability with the Hive Knight Azradat as the final boss. But in addition to that, there is, I was recently informed of something else regarding deep dives. The final boss It should be, based on the rotations, back to the wizard. But I heard allegedly that picking up the random, picking up plants actually change the final boss that you face. So, question mark on that. But then in terms of the rest of the seasonal activities, we also have the Defined Battlegrounds in the EDZ this week for that. Now, in terms of our seasonal quests as well for our weekly challenges, we have 2 more weeks of challenges, week 9 and week 10 coming up. We also have, for our variety, we have Super Salvager for defeating combatants with super abilities and salvage activities, specifically 50 combatants. Treasures from the Deep for completing a deep dive activity with the highest tier reward bonus, which I believe is a tier 7, basically hardest as possible. Commendable Diver for giving or receiving commendations in a match-made deep dive activity. Pinnacle for reaching power level 1810 for Pinnacle rewards, which if you don't know what that means, basically every piece of your armor has to be 1810 in every single slot to be able to earn 1810, and just as an example, you hit it with that, and once every single piece of your gear that has power reaches 1810, that should automatically pop. If you don't have it currently, then it's pretty easy to go for. There's still some decent Pinnacle rewards here and there. Then, as well, we have Trial by Firing Squad, which is winning multiple rounds in Trial of Osiris. Funny that comes around, as Trials is disabled for the weekend because of Iron Banner. Also have Broadside for defeating targets and Gambit with power weapons, bonus progress granted for final blows with linear fusion rifles or guardians, and Implements of War for defeating targets with auto rifles, hand cannons, scout rifles, glaives, and linear fusion rifles, bonus progress for defeating guardians. And that can be done anywhere with any of those assorted weaponry. That all give you a bonus experience, some of it Bright Dust in the Trials number, as well as a Trials weapon. But you have to wait until another 2 weeks to complete that. Then going throughout the world for our rotations and pinnacles. So our rotation raid is currently on the moon for the Garden of Salvation, which means the Garden of Salvation weaponry can be farmed infinitely, and of course, as usual, all challenges are active in all 4 encounters. However, because Divinity is a quest, there is no boosted exotic drop chance or exotic farming time, so you would only be going for weapons or trying to get that piece of armor to drop for your transmog. And then for the dungeon as well, let's see, is it Grasp Everest? No. What was the dungeon last week off the top of my head? I can't recall what the dungeon is. That's Avalon. I am totally blanking on something. Because Ghost of the Deep is still current. Oh, wait, no, yeah, I am an idiot. Because it is a part of the Throne World. Spires the Watcher is currently the farmable dungeon, which means that you can get drops from the weapons, armor, anything can drop from anywhere for free. Just run it again, and same thing with the Hierarchy of Needs exotic bow. That can drop an infinite amount of times if you so wish to run Perseus over and over again, if your brain can handle that much annoyance. Then, in terms of the rest of the raid rotations, going to the Dreaming City for the challenge mode is currently Forever Fight, which I think is not Shirochi, that is Vault Challenge, I think it was. And then, like I said, for Garden of Salvation, all challenges are active there. Then going to Europa for the Deep Stone Crypt. Our current active challenge is Of All Trades, which is the 3rd encounter challenge. Basically, every person involved in the raid has to do every single roll more than, at least once, which results in a chaos in swapping the roles and having everyone to need to do the jobs available. Then into the Legends tab for everything. In the Vault of Glass, we have the Strangers in Time challenge, which is basically Gatekeeper challenge. You have to kill the Wyverns and the Praetorians at relatively the same time in the different time zones. And for King's Fall, we have the Gaze Amaze challenge, which is Golgoroth challenge. Basically, whoever is holding Golgoroth's gaze has to lose the buff while standing in the pool of reclaimed light. Then, lastly, wrapping it up in the Throne World, we have Swift Destruction, which is first encounter challenge in Valor Disciple. Basically, the unstoppable abominations in the first encounter relatively have to be killed around the same time and within a few seconds of each other. Then going to Neptune for all of our rotations. In terms of Root of Nightmare, is currently the All Hands challenge, which, if I can remember, means it is Nezarec challenge off the top of my head, which is basically that every person has to do some part of the chain, if I remember what that is. Then on Master Mode is Mobility Focused Armor for the ability, or the armor farming, and the current modifiers being all 3 elemental shields, extra champions, extra shields, and a maximum effective level of 1820. Barrier Unstoppable, Seasonal Overcharge, as well as Arc and Void Surge, and per the usual Overcharge Shotgun, which again, that doesn't seem to ever change. So I shall keep track of it and maybe eventually just stop saying it if it doesn't change. In terms of our Neptune environment as well, the current active Vex incursion zone is in the Zephyr concourse, which also means the backdoor partition is available, which is a little bit of the easier one. It's basically when you have to kill something, get a bomb, and break down a wall. And then you're fighting the Wyvern at the end. And then with the weekly mission rotation, it is the Desperate Measures, which is, I guess, the final mission. It's hard to tell, though, from the sound of the missions again. But it does sound like it is the final mission. So a lot of fighting, and then a boss fight, and then the mission is pretty much over. Then, in terms of the Eternity, and then everything else, for Dares of Eternity, for the rotation, it is, for Legend Mode, Vex, Cabal, and Crota. Then, that is pretty much everything happening throughout the world. Like I said, though, the fishing, it does not return to an individual area. It is now back to, or it is still on a 3-world rotation. I don't know exactly when that might calm down, so take advantage of it while you can in case you're still hunting exotics. Then at Banshee 44, on the front page, we have the Old Sterling, which is a Strand adaptive frame auto rifle, fresh this season. Now, in its variety of perks, it has the access to the field test origin trait, which means it's still generally good. Access to things like rewind rounds and harmony right off the bat, and of course, because there's Strand, hatchling, and access to unraveling rounds is still a thing, so this is possibly a good new workhorse for anybody looking to dip their toes into Strand. It doesn't have ready access to many of the variety of Strand weaponry. Then as well, we have Nezarac's Whisper, which is an Arc Glaive, which I've mentioned this a lot because it keeps showing up. Craftable, and a pretty solid one for, I know a lot of people were making Arc builds out of this. The role of Turnabout and Demolitionist is not that bad of a combination, especially with Extrovert giving you the bonus health upon killing nightmares or multiple combatants. So, at the same time though, this is craftable, so if you wish to add it to your collection and pick a glaive and build it however you want it, that is also an option. We have Combined Action as well, which is a arced aggressive frame hand cannon. Access to the field test origin trait as well, because it is gunsmith style. Now, while Zen Moment and Offhand Strike are pretty not great, especially for hand cannons, I might recommend Zen Moment for aggressive frames, simply because they have a little bit more kick than literally every other hand cannon, including View Bob in the screen for some reason. But another role of that is possibly better. Access to things like Volt Shot and even Eddy Current is a little bit better, just because it is, you know, arc and subclass dependent, which is typically in this day and age the go-to for weaponry. Then for a linear fusion rifle, we have Sail Spy Pitch Glass from the Season of Plunder set, which also being craftable. Now, it is not the best linear fusion rifle, but it is something different. And I heard some time ago that because this thing has Volt Shot, technically it is the highest damage dealer with Volt Shot, because when it is applied, the amount of damage the Volt Shot does is dependent on how much damage the round it applied it does. So, a good option there. And similarly, we have Tarnished Metal from the same set, also craftable, also access to Volt Shot. Is probably one of my most used scout rifles next to Vision of Confluence. As you can see, I've been using that one quite a lot. It's not as high leveled up as some people would say for a use a lot, considering it's about 5 seasons old at this point, but still, recommend it fully. That is a good use from me. Then, in the main gunsmith weaponry, we have the Crate, which is a rapid-fire stasis auto rifle, which, in terms of this role, is not great, because Compulsive Reloader is still kind of dirt, and Focus Fury is kind of annoying on something that is not controllable on. So unless you're on PC using it on a Divinity Bubble or something like that, I would not recommend this one for damage buff. There are better options for more damage, like Frenzy, and a variety of other options. And we have Lunalata 4B, which this is a role that I would recommend. I know it's been coming up here and there, and I always talk about it. Headstone on this bow is actually pretty freaking solid, because in my experience, when somebody starts using a bow, they get used to going for headshots only, and then Headstone you can only benefit, especially running stasis builds, where you benefit from shattering crystals and that sort of thing. Then we also have Fugue 55, which is a pretty solid adaptive frame sniper rifle for Crucible or PvE. It has rolls for both, but this roll is a mix of both because more ammo, yet also snapshot sights. Don't know if I would recommend it for anything, just because there are some endgame damage snipers that do outpace it, and Suros is typically a more Crucible-based, you know, origin trait. Same with Amalon Fluid Dynamics for this one. Now, Galu RR3, very similar status, art, adaptive frame, Amalon rifle, which means it's still a little more stat-based. Snapshot sights as well. Shoot to loot for reloading from a distance. Very similarly so, a split PvE and PvP role. Then we have Typhon GL5, a grenade launcher that I wish dozens of times is craftable. It has very solid rolls, stasis, or just generally grenade launcher-wise. Because it is adaptive and not rapid fire, it is one of the fewer states of damage you can get from a grenade launcher. But with things like spike grenades as well, it can just get the extra step up above rapid fires. And then we have Nazardin, which is a Adept of Flame sword. With field tested, it allows it that after just being in combat, you gain increased charge rate and guard resistance. But with it being a sword in the field of the class swords, exotic swords, and the variety, it's hard to say if this is worth putting into your inventory just because there's at least a single sword somewhere else more relevant that is a little bit more effective. Now, if you watch this far in the video, I very much do appreciate your time, as just general interaction with any of my videos, even if it's just viewing, definitely helps out a lot on the channel. And as well, if you're itching for a sneak peek into the other video that I will be doing of the Eververse style, there is one that is going to be totally worth visiting the Eververse store this week for. Now, when you visit Ada, you have 3 shaders as always. You have the Vitrified Chronology, which is a shader that is weird because I remember using it a lot on guns because it produced an interesting effect, but on armor, slightly less so. Has a nice purple glow, but is mostly silver with a faded blue style with a very bright and shiny. I used it on 1 or 2 weapons that looked very solid, very much like a Lunar Gloom, if I recall. Then we also have Echoes of Io Worn, which is a version of a shader that's basically light whites and yellows that looks a little bit more dirty than the rest. So pretty much just to get for the collections as opposed to using. Then we also have War Cult Scheme, which is very much future War Cult style. Now, I always like this combination of this purple and this white. It's a very Power Ranger sort of look, but at the same time, it's still a bit loud for a personal preference. I do like the combination, but don't think I'd ever use it. But don't let me stop you. It's still a pretty solid look. With that, that is everything available currently for the week. If there's anything farming related, I'd recommend going for it because pretty soon, of course, it will be gone. And with as few weeks left in the season, there's a good chance that anything might not have a second chance this season before it rotates all the way around again. With that, my name is Matt Scorpion, and thank you for watching.